for the 2006 Sound Opinions interview with Audrey. The legendary critic died on April 4th, 2013. Coming up next is an award-winning documentary from the Lost and Found Sound series. In 1966, a young Marine took a reel-to-reel tape recorder with him into the Vietnam War. For 2 months, until he was killed in action, Michael Baranowski made tapes of his friends of life fighting homes of combat in Southeast Asia. 34 years later, his comrade Tim Duffy brought Baranowski's finished reels to the Lost and Found Sound project. The Vietnam tapes of Lance Corporal Michael A. Baranowski originally aired on the 25th anniversary of America's withdrawal from Vietnam. The story was produced by Jay Allison and Christina Eckloff.
Every death is a tragedy, and I don't buy in any given death was more tragic than the others, okay? But in this, of all the 58,000 tragedies, this is one that's very close to me.
All right, thank you all for tuning in to WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice and music, your station. My name is Jeff Badu, and I'm a parallel entrepreneur and a wealth multiplier. I'm the founder and CEO of Badu Enterprises LLC, which is a multinational conglomerate in the finance industry. And what we do is essentially we provide a suite of financial services, including tax preparation, financial coaching, property tax appeals, and services of the sort. So with that being said, I would love to first and foremost welcome you guys to the show Money Talks, where all we talk is money. We're live right now on WGHC LP 98.3 FM, and essentially this is something to keep in mind. Now, if you're looking to support the station, we are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. You can support WGHC by donating on our homepage at wghcradio.org. You can also stream us live at wghcradio.org by clicking the Listen Live tab. So we are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, meaning that all your all your donations are actually tax deductible. And I know this is something very valuable for us as we basically end the year. And one thing to note, I won't be here next Monday due to the Christmas holiday, and then also the following Monday I'll be out traveling, and so I won't be here next Monday or the following Monday, but I will be back on the 11th. So January 11th will be our next segment together. So with that, today, a brand new stimulus package was released. And I said, man, you know what? By the way, when I come up with topics, I usually come up with them within 24 hours of the show. So within 24 hours of starting the show, I usually come up with a topic. Right? That's how spontaneous I want this to be. Although I also want to be fully prepared. And just to keep it interesting for me, that's something I challenge myself, is I come up with a topic within 24 hours. And today, stimulus package was essentially released yesterday, but it was officially signed and inked today. And so we'll be talking about that, just all the different stipulations of it, all the things that you should know, all the different guidelines and everything like that. So we'll be sharing all the key takeaways from the new stimulus package that was passed today, and tell you guys what's to come over the next few months or so. It will be busy for us, but of course I'll be gone I'll actually be gone from December 24th until January 4th. So I'll be celebrating Christmas and New Year. So I won't be responding to emails, text messages, phone calls, anything like that. That's just one of the boundaries that I set for when I travel. So before that, let's get into the market report. So this will tie nicely into our stimulus package discussion. So this report is as of December 18, 2020. So as of last Friday. Tech stocks and consumer shares opened last week on an upswing. Unfortunately, the rest of the market lagged. Investors face the prospects of more stringent restrictions as COVID-19 cases continue to surge. The NASDAQ went up 0.5%. The Russell 2000 went up 0.1%. And essentially, the Dow went down 0.6%. The S&P 500 went down 0.4%, and then the global Dow went down 0.2%. As a friendly reminder, the NASDAQ is composed mainly of technology stocks. So it's an index that's composed mainly of the big tech stocks that you know out there, such as Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Tesla, the big giant tech companies out there in the world. And yes, if you didn't know, Amazon is a tech company. Crude oil prices rose, although the energy sector dropped more than 3.5%. The dollar and the 10-year Treasury yields declined. On the positive side, vaccines were rolled out in parts of the United States last Monday. So essentially, Pfizer released or rolled out their COVID-19 vaccines. And then just to get ahead a bit today, we also had Moderna, which, full disclosure, I'm personally invested in the company. But Moderna also released their vaccines today, and it's out to the public for those in the U.S. to get vaccinated. I believe they recommended those who are 75 and older, and also frontline workers, such as nurses and other healthcare workers, to get the vaccine. Of course, proceed with caution because there's so many disclaimers that are put into those when they say, if you take the vaccine, we're not guaranteeing that you will avoid COVID-19, but you may actually even get sick. That's basically what they're telling people. And so take it at your own risk. It's something that I guess it's good for the economy, but it may not be good for your body. At least we don't know yet how truly effective this thing is. Stocks rebounded last Tuesday on news of the approval of a second virus vaccine and positive developments on additional fiscal stimulus. That's our topic for today. Each of the benchmark indexes gained value, led by the Russell 2000 at 2.4%, followed by the S&P 500 at 1.3%. The NASDAQ went up 1.3%. Dow went up 1.1%, and then the global Dow went up 1.0%. Treasury yields jumped higher, as did crude oil prices. The dollar lost value. All of the major market indexes or sectors essentially posted gains, with utility, energy, and materials leading the way. Investors got more encouraging news on movement toward a fiscal stimulus package. So, by the way, when there's news that a stimulus package, more money is being released into the economy, it gets investors excited. So that increases the stock market. It increases the demand in the stock market because more and more people are buying. They have more money to buy, basically, or at least that's what they think. So essentially, us having a fiscal stimulus package signed into law today, that's huge for the market. But essentially, congressional leaders at the time continued to negotiate last Wednesday. Mega caps, retail, and information technology, or IT for short, drove stocks higher as the NASDAQ went up 0.5%, S&P 500 went up 0.2%, and then the global Dow went up 0.4%. Russell 2000 went down 0.3%, and then the Dow went down, ironically, no pun intended, 0.2%. Treasury yields dropped as bond prices rose. Crude oil prices advanced for the third consecutive day, while the dollar mostly declined. All right, and then moving on, investors continue to ride the wave of hope for a new stimulus package. So every single day they've been hoping for a new stimulus package, and today we finally got what we wanted before the end of the year. Both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ reached record highs by the close of trading last Thursday, while the Russell 2000 went up 1.3%, Global Dow went up 0.5%, and the Dow went up 0.5%. So investors are they continuously get excited. They're getting excited as this new stimulus deal is more than likely going to be passed, at least as of last week. So that kept driving the markets. They kept driving the markets up and up and up. And today, the market ironically went down because the UK has a new strain of COVID-19, which hopefully they don't touch the US or anywhere else in the world with that. Basically, every country, or at least the ones that they it ain't on the news, has blocked the UK from entering into their country because nobody wants another strain of COVID-19. I mean, who wants to go a whole year in a pandemic? I don't think anybody in their right minds would want a whole year of lockdowns and pandemic. So the UK is basically on lockdown. They can't go anywhere, nor can we go there. So if you're traveling to the UK, good luck. I don't even think you could before the new strain came out. So just something to watch out for. It's always important to pay attention to news and be in the know. When you know, you do good. All right, so back to the topic. So essentially, crude oil prices and treasury yields rose while the dollar fell. Among the sectors, real estate, materials, healthcare, and utilities led the way, while communication services and energy lagged. The Russell 2000 went up 1.3%, the Global Dow went up 0.5%, and the Dow went up 0.5%. So let's see what happened last Friday, and I guarantee you fiscal stimulus will be part of the topic. Last week ended on a sour note as more congressional haggling over a fiscal stimulus, and they just panicked. All of a sudden, they stopped negotiating, and then the market just panicked. It just went on a panic attack. But essentially, it was dominated. That's what dominated the news that day. Stocks closed lower on the day, with the Global Dow falling 0.5%, followed by the Dow and the Russell 2000, each dropping 0.4%. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ came down from the record highs, losing 0.4% and 0.1% respectively. Materials, healthcare, industrials, and consumer staples were the only market sectors to gain ground last Friday, but only marginal. Crude oil prices, the dollar, and treasury yields all closed higher. So despite the ongoing negotiations over additional fiscal stimulus, investors continue to see value in stocks, pushing each of the benchmark indexes essentially higher last week. The NASDAQ and the Russell 2000 enjoyed solid gains, followed by the S&P 500, the Global Dow, and the Dow. Bearing a major downturn, all of the indexes essentially will close the year ahead, which is good, which is great news, by the way. It means we've done great this year. I mean, we're keeping on with the keeping on. We're pushing. We're overcoming all obstacles, all adversity, and all that stuff as far as the market is concerned. And 2019, believe it or not, was actually one of the best years in the stock market. Even in the pandemic, even as the world is in shambles, even as everything is in turmoil, look at what the market is doing. That lets you know how resilient the market really is. That lets you know where you should actually really be putting your money, as you know, basically from a passive standpoint, passive investing. So we're not talking about day trading or anything here. We're just talking about somewhere to place your money just in case you need to park it somewhere, and then maybe you get into real estate or something more active. So the price of crude oil went up $46.58 per barrel to $49.05 per barrel, probably as more people are driving and as more people are using oil. Price of COMEX gold went up $18.42.90 to $18.86.30. And so far, the Dow Jones is up 5.75%. The NASDAQ is up 42.16%. The S&P 500, which is composed of the top 500 companies in the U.S., and congrats to Tesla on joining the S&P 500 today, by the way, S&P 500 is up 14.81%, even during the pandemic. That is insane, even during a recession, technically. Russell 2000 is up 18.07%. And that was down, like, earlier this year, by the way. It was down big time. And now it's up 18.07%. Huge. If you didn't put your money in the stock market this year, I think you made a massive mistake. Same for last year. Same for the year before that. Right? So it's very important that we stay optimistic and we stay invested. We keep our money moving. Worst case, you lose a little bit of money. But as we know, if you look at a 100-year chart, you'll probably notice that it's gone up probably 90 out of those 100 times. Who knows? I have to double check on the data there. But let's just say 9 times out of 10, you're gaining money. Who shouldn't be a part of that? So it's a very worthwhile place to park your money. I still think it's one of the greatest investments in the world. And you can make a lot of money. Even if you're not making a lot of money, at least your money is growing at a minimal beyond inflation. So that's very important. You should be keeping your money at places where it achieves beyond inflation returns. Global Dow is up 7.02%. Interest rates are 0%, and 10-year treasuries are 0.94%. So interest rates are super, super low. A few things to look forward to this week. Christmas week brings with it plenty of economic reports, and Merry Christmas to those out there that celebrate, and also Happy New Year, as I won't be here next Monday nor the following Monday, so would like to get my shout-outs early. The final estimate of the third quarter gross domestic product, or GDP, is available. The second estimate showed that the economy advanced at an annual rate of 33.1% in the third quarter. That figure is not likely to change in the third and last estimate. Also out this week is the November report on personal income and spending. Personal income fell 0.7% in October, while consumer spending increased 0.5%. Prices for consumer goods and services were unchanged in October and have risen only 1.2% over the last 12 months, indicative of muted inflationary trends. So for those that don't know, inflation is determined hugely by the consumer, basically the prices of consumer goods. And the fact that it's only risen 1.2% means that there's not really a lot of inflation. Inflation is low. So this year, to be honest, if you really think about it, it could have been a great year for you. It could have been a great year, and I know some people are struggling financially. They might have lost their jobs, got furloughed. Some people might have even lost their homes, and I know there's huge eviction prevention measures going on right now and everything like that. So hopefully nobody listening today went through that. But if you didn't go through that, it could have been a very prosperous year for you. And that things were cheaper. You could have got bargains and all that stuff. And then also, the stock market went up big time. NASDAQ went up 42%. That's massive. S&P 500 went up 14.81%. Let's just call it 15%. That's huge. I mean, these are massive, massive, massive returns on investment. In a year when it's a pandemic, just imagine what will happen next year. I can already place a bet right now that the market will go up next year. By the end of 2021, December 31st, 2021, the stock market will be higher than when it started with at December 31st, 2020. I can guarantee you that, because there will be less restrictions. There will be more stimulus into the economy. And essentially, the world will start normalizing again. Tech will still be hot no matter what. Tech will be hot. Pharmaceuticals will be hot as they're releasing vaccines into the world. Hopefully good vaccines. But as they keep releasing vaccines, pharma is something that's going to keep going up as they have to do even more research to really get that vaccine down packed correctly. So I predict that the market will go up big time. I mean, in a big way next year. And I think that you should take part of that. I don't think you should sit on the sidelines. I think you should get in the market. At worst, get into an index fund. Perhaps the S&P 500, one of the most popular indexes out there, is called SPY, or index funds, ETFs for short, exchange-traded funds. So my advice for the end of 2020, get in the market. If you're not in, get in. If you're already in, try to put more money into it. Unless you have the world's greatest investment on the planet, aka real estate or a business, then you should take your money out of the market and put it into that investment. That's just word to the wise there, essentially. All right, so we got about 30 minutes or so to cover this new stimulus package. So what I'll do today is real simple. I'll just be breaking down the stimulus package, interpreting it, letting you know ways to take advantage of it. It was just passed today, literally today, this morning, a stimulus package was passed. News came out last night, which basically indicated that it would be out today. So we'll be taking about 30 minutes to go over that. Full disclosure, my advice is to take full advantage of all of these packages that I'm mentioning now. And there are other components. So disclaimer, there are other components of the stimulus package. What I'm doing now is I'm covering the key points, the ones that deal with money, let's just say. Because today, this is Money Talks after all, right? So breaking down the $900 billion stimulus package and the $1.4 trillion omnibus bill. Full disclosure, the U.S. government is in $3.7 trillion worth of debt. And essentially, they're adding more to it every day. They're printing money like crazy. What that means is that in the future, tax rates will go up. Guaranteed, no questions asked. They need the money from somewhere to replenish all that money the government is spending. By the way, have you ever wondered where the government gets their money? They get it from you, actually. They get it from people like you and I, taxpayer dollars. But the fact that they're in a deficit, I'm wondering, where do they get their money? Well, here's the secret. They just print more money. And they just devalue the dollar tremendously. They're just printing to the point where it's like the dollar is kind of worthless if you really think about it. It's good to have. It's definitely good to have. But in actual money terms, from a monetary standpoint, it's really worthless. Because they just keep printing more and more and more. So this $900 billion, I guarantee you they're in the back room right now at the Federal Reserve printing that money so that they can give it to the SBA, Small Business Administration. They can give it to the IRS or Internal Revenue Service, aka Department of the Treasury, and to other groups that help disperse the funds. So $900 billion with a B. $900 billion was released today. And congressional leaders on Monday, so today, unveiled the text of a $900 billion fiscal stimulus package and a $1.4 trillion government funding deal that basically helped save the government because the government was going to shut down if they didn't actually approve something. So they were kind of on a time crunch. To be honest, I think that if they weren't on a time crunch, they wouldn't have approved the bill. They would just kept lingering around like they usually do. But $900 billion fiscal stimulus package and a $1.4 trillion government funding deal that would deliver critical, and I mean critical, there are people that really, really need this money right now, critical pandemic aid to millions of Americans and pad federal agency budgets through next September. So they're funded until next September. Hopefully, they'll get their acts together even more and be funded longer than that. And congratulations to our new president, Joe Biden. You know, I guess we can put our faith in him and see what he can do for us. And hopefully he'll release more money into the economy. And his goal is to increase taxes. And one of our goals, of course, at Badu Tax Services is to help you reduce taxes. So that's something that we're always here to help you do. So let's talk about the key components of, at least from a financial standpoint, of the stimulus package. So there's $166 billion that is allocated to direct checks. Individuals making up to $75,000 a year, and adjusted gross income, of course, will receive a payment of $600, while couples making up to $150,000 a year will receive $1,200, in addition to $600 per child. So it used to be $1,200 in the old stimulus package. Now it's $600. They trimmed it in half, essentially. The deal also makes the stimulus checks more accessible to immigrant families, so that's very important. In the first stimulus package, if you had an I-10 individual tax identification number and not a social security number, you were not eligible for the stimulus check. So now, if you have an I-10, or if you're an immigrant, essentially, perhaps somebody who may be undocumented, you actually get an opportunity to get the stimulus package. But of course, proceed with caution. If you're undocumented, they can always deport you. So these are all things to keep in mind. You know, not trying to be funny or anything like that. This is serious business here that we're talking today. So $600 per person, essentially, in the family. Which, I mean, some may argue that it's not a lot, but hey, it's better than nothing. If you're getting $600 from the government, you better take it and just thank God for it, honestly. That's all you can really do. They're giving you $600. They say you don't have to work for it. You don't have to do anything for this money. We're just going to send it to you. Now, here's a few things you might want to know. One, you should have your tax returns filed up to date, ASAP. Right? Submit that tax return as soon as possible. If you haven't filed your 2019 return, please submit it. If you can do direct deposit, please make sure you add your direct deposit information. The IRS has not released any information about the $600. So please, our firm doesn't have any information on it. It just got released today as far as the package itself, but no true information has been released about this stimulus from the IRS. Now, Treasury Secretary Stephen, we'll call him Stephen M for now, said Monday that the checks could go out as soon as next week. So what a great way to celebrate Christmas, where we'll get $600 in our bank accounts, essentially next week, as soon as next week. At least that's what they're promising us. I don't think that's actually possible, by the way. I mean, I think some people will get it by next week. But here's a few things. For one, you would have to have your direct deposit information on file up to date with the IRS in order to get this check. For two, if you haven't filed your taxes, well, how can you get your check? Three, there's some people that essentially file or owed money, so they don't have direct deposit information on file with the IRS. So now they have to wait for their check, and we all know, some of us who've experienced it, we know how long it takes the IRS to mail us a check. It can take months and months to get it. So I think they should have added a disclaimer here that if you're fully compliant with the IRS and you got a refund for the 2019 tax year, then yes, you can expect it by next week. But don't get your hopes high. Don't put this in your Christmas budget. If anything, save this money, invest this money. We just talked about the stock market. That's a great place to be putting your money. So I know our firm will get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. Me personally, I won't be here from the 24th until the 4th. But we have the rest of our team who can certainly help out with any inquiries. The next one is $120 billion allocated to extra unemployment help. Jobless workers will get an extra $300 per week in federal cash through March 14th. Hopefully they extend it beyond that, because we know the pandemic will go beyond that. The legislation also extends employment benefits to self-employed individuals, which is usually not the case, gig workers, aka Uber drivers, and those who've exhausted their state benefits. So if you're collecting unemployment right now, great news for you. You're getting an extra $300 a week, or $1,200 per month. It used to be $600 a week. So for those Uber drivers, taxi drivers that may not be comfortable going out to work or basically aren't able to provide, this is a great thing. This is fabulous. This is awesome. You get your $300 per week. It is taxable, right? Unlike the direct checks. The $600 of stimulus checks, those are not taxable. But this $300, however, is taxable. Very important to keep that in mind. I know some clients will come to me next year and they'll say, hey, can you file my taxes? Next thing you know, I see an unemployment tax return. So the government does send you a 1099 to show how much unemployment you've received throughout the year. Please make sure you include it on your tax return. If you don't, they will be knocking on your door asking for their money. And I know a lot of people who did not withhold any taxes, which financially is actually a smart thing to do, but it could hurt you when you file your taxes. And they'll get mad at me, of course. They'll get mad at me. I'm always the guy taking the heat. but they'll get mad at me. They'll get mad at my firm because they owe money. And even if I explain to them that you did not withhold taxes on your unemployment, this is why you owe money, and they'll still be mad. We're okay, right? We're trained enough, we're humble enough, and we're patient enough to be able to deal with such such inquiries. So we got the direct checks, the stimulus checks, then we have the extra unemployment. The next one is $325 billion to those that are so near and dear to my heart, small businesses. So a boost, basically 1/3 of the bill went to small businesses. So $325 billion to small businesses. Pandemic, basically the small businesses are suffering. A lot of small businesses went out of business. So basically, the small businesses that were hit hard would see a total of $325 billion. And this is where most of my clients fall within, by the way. In our firm, 70% of our clients are small business owners. Most of those small business owners tend to be real estate investors. But $325 billion to small businesses, including $284 billion in loans through the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP for short. Then you have $20 billion for businesses in low-income communities, and $15 billion for struggling live venues, movie theaters, museum, performing arts, things of that nature. A major priority for Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. The small business aid, only expected to cover less than 3 months of payroll costs, is only expected to cover less than 3 months of payroll costs, aka 2.5 months. However, while many employers don't expect to resume normal operations for more than 6 months. So that's telling me that that's a flaw in the package. You're giving small businesses only 2.5 months worth of funding, but some of these businesses won't open for another 6 months. That's a huge gap. That means you basically have 3.5 months that you need to make up. Well, where is this money going to come from? Why are small businesses going out of business? Because they don't have this money. Now, if you are a small business owner, you should take advantage. And as I always tell my clients, make sure you're compliant with the IRS. If you want government cheese, make sure you're at least compliant with the IRS. Meaning you have your tax returns filed up to date, fully. No questions asked. If you don't, you're going to get burned on this one. Meaning that you have your profit and loss and your balance sheet for 2019. And then also, we're approaching the end of the year. Try to have it ready for 2020. One of my New Year's resolutions is to wrap up my financials by the first week of January, typically. So this is a way to get ahead. They haven't really said if this data or the qualifications will be based on 2019 or 2020 yet. I would imagine it could be based off 2020 since we're so close to the end of the year. But the Paycheck Protection Program is back. And the stimulus for small businesses is back. They haven't said anything about EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loans, but I could imagine they might pour some money into there as well. Now, this is huge. For my small business owners out there, this next point is massive. So there's tax breaks as well that came along with the stimulus package. The legislation allows businesses to deduct expenses associated with their forgiven, keyword forgiven, PPP loans, Paycheck Protection Program loans, in addition to expanding the employee retention credit intended to prevent layoffs. So this is huge. At first, you could not deduct expenses that were tied to your PPP loans because in a way it was considered double dipping, which is actually true. So now, ultimately, you can receive the PPP loan, get it forgiven, and you can also deduct whatever you spent the money, the forgiven money of the PPP loan. That is massive. Talk about increasing your cash flow on your tax return. I mean, that's huge. I think this would be something that will be overlooked, but I know in our firm, every client we talk to will say, hey, did you have PPP? Did you get the PPP loan? What were some of the expenses? Did you include those expenses in your expense summary? Yes or no? If not, please include those because we can deduct those now. So this is a huge change. We actually have to go back in some of our webinars and correct this. We sent out an email today to some of our webinar hosts to let them know that they just changed the legislation. At first, you couldn't deduct the PPP loan expenses, but now you can. That is huge, and I'm really glad that the groups like the AICPA, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, fought hard for this one, and we're always out here for small businesses, for sure. It's very near and dear to our hearts. But it includes a 2-year tax break for business meals, a priority for President Donald Trump, and rolls over a variety of temporary tax breaks known as extenders, some for multiple years. So the package also extends a payroll tax subsidy for employers offering workers paid sick leave and boosts the earned income tax credit. That is good. Good stuff right there. And shout out to Guillermo for joining us today. Next one is rental aid and an eviction ban. So of the $25 billion in federal rental assistance, $800 million is set aside for Native American housing entities. A federal eviction ban has been extended through the end of January, basically meaning you can't really evict a tenant. This one is a bit tough. Me personally, I'm a landlord, right? So luckily, we've only had, out of the 57 tenants that we have right now, there's only maybe 3, full disclosure, maybe 3 that are struggling a bit with rent. So for them, any programs we come across, we send them a link to say, hey, this is the program, here's the qualifications, we're here to help, walk you through the process. It used to be 5, but now it's down to 3. The other 2, they were actually funded through the IHDA Illinois housing program that basically provided $5,000 to tenants so that they can subsidize their housing. So we actually had 2 tenants that applied and actually received it. And we're always encouraging our tenants, or our 3 tenants that are delinquent or late on rent, we're always encouraging them, hey, you know, these are the packages available. When can you pay? These are all a few things that, so if you're a landlord, be proactive, please. Don't be the slumlord, somebody who just sits back, relaxes, and doesn't really watch their property. Be proactive, look into these programs, send them to your tenants, and see what you can do for them. When you help somebody, they tend to help you back. So I believe Kurt might have had a question, and he said, does that include the first PPP loan? Yes, it does. So any PPP loan money that you receive, you can deduct the expense, even if you essentially, even if you got them forgiven. So that's something that they laid out in the package. Next on the list is infusion for schools and childcare. I thought this was important because schools are also near and dear to my heart, and educating the youth. Included in the $82 billion total for colleges and universities is more than $4 billion for a governor's relief fund, more than $54 billion for public K-12 schools, and nearly $23 billion for a higher education fund. Separately, the child care sector will receive about $10 billion in emergency cash. So for those that don't think the government does anything for the youth or kids or the education, well, there you go. $82 billion poured right into education. Next, last on my list is higher education compromise. The legislation includes a bipartisan agreement to forgive nearly $1.3 billion in federal loans to historically black colleges and universities, HBCU for short, deliver Pell Grants to incarcerated students after a 26-year ban, and simplify financial aid forms. The last of those 3 has been a long-time priority for the retiring Alexander. The deal would also repeal a 1998 law that prohibits students convicted of drug offenses from receiving federal financial aid. That is huge. I don't know if you guys really heard that. But the deal would also repeal a 1998 law that prohibits students convicted of drug offenses from receiving federal financial aid. Usually on the financial aid applications, they ask you a question, are you a convicted felon or do you have any drug offenses? Well, now if you answer yes to it, you can still get financial aid, as opposed to when you answered yes in the past, it would disqualify you from aid. So I think this is good. I would say big shout out to the government for this one. To be honest, I'm somebody who usually bashes the government. But this time, I think they did pretty good. I think they could have went a little further on $900 billion, but they are in $3.7 trillion of debt, so I can't really blame them on that one. So that's big. $1.3 billion will be forgiven in federal student loans for historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and also Pell Grants to incarcerated students. And that's big. So these are the key takeaways from the new stimulus bill that was just passed today. If you need help with anything, please feel free to reach out. Reminder that I personally will be gone from December 24th until January 4th, so I will not be in the office responding to emails, texts, or anything like that. So if you text me during that time and I don't respond, that's exactly why. It's because I'm actually out of the office. But anytime until then and after, I'm all yours. So just to recap on the $900 billion stimulus package, which is part of the $1.4 trillion omnibus bill, is the direct checks, so $600 to everyone. The extra unemployment, $300 every single week. And then also the boost to small businesses, $325 billion poured into small business programs. And then the tax breaks, the fact that you can deduct PPP loan expenses, which is huge, even if they're forgiven. And then also payroll tax credits, things of that nature. And the earned income tax credit has been expanded. And then there's rental aid and an eviction ban that's been extended. Infusion for schools and childcare. And then last but not least, higher education compromise. There were others that were in there, COVID-19 vaccines and all that stuff. But for the purposes and the sake of our time, I wanted to talk about that. And yes, appreciate you, Guillermo. Merry Christmas to you too. And yes, I will be taking a break because Lord knows it's been a great year, but it's been a very busy year. Talk about having tax season extended until July. I mean, that's quite insane. So I've only taken really one vacation this year, quote unquote, and I'll be on my next one, or my last one of the year, in a few days. So with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. It's been great talking to you guys this year. I'll be back on January 11th for our next segment. You know, I'll be back in town on January 5th, but I will be back on the radio on January 11th. And we'll hit the ground running. We'll actually be doing a few presentations. We'll be doing a Biden tax policy, tax hikes. His plan is to increase taxes. So we'll talk about the policies, the proposals, and then we'll also talk about ways to mitigate those impacts. So we'll be doing a webinar on that, and we'll also do one on the radio as well, just for those who couldn't catch the information. So on the 11th, we'll be talking about Biden's tax policy. And with that, I hope you guys have a great Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope 2020 was prosperous for you, and I hope 2021 you have a good, solid foundation of everything. I hope 2021 is a great year for you. It's a prosperous year for you. Don't let the pandemic defeat you. It's more of a mental thing than a physical thing. It's actually more of a spiritual thing than even a mental and physical thing. So as long as you keep your spirit high and you keep your mind right, you can overcome any obstacle on the planet. So with that being said, thank you all for tuning in to WGHC LP FM 98.3. And with that being said, my name is Chef Badu, and I look forward to continuously delivering you all some content. Thank you.